Okay, now we all know what to do now, right? Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm happy to be here again. I'm hoping this isn't going to trigger any sort of interstate NFL-based antagonism for any Lions fans that are in the room. But what I'd like to do today is share a little Pittsburgh wisdom with yins. For many years, I've been the faculty advisor for the LGBTQ student group that's at my school on my campus. And one of the things that we've done over the years with that group is a lot of field trips. We've gone to a lot of different places, just trying to give the students, little rural county in Southeast Ohio. And a lot of our students have not traveled a lot and have not very worldly, and we're trying to give them a little more experience. So we don't have a lot of time and money, though, so we can't, take off to New York City or whatever. But a number of those trips have just been just over the Ohio River to Pittsburgh. We're an hour's drive away from downtown Pittsburgh. That's the closest big city to us. But it's been amazing to me. I've been there 30 years now. It's amazing to me the number of locals who've never been to Pittsburgh or spent very little time there, So we've taken them to science museums and art museums and the Cathedral of Learning at the University of Pittsburgh. If you're ever in Pittsburgh and you have the chance to go to the Cathedral of Learning, especially at Christmas time, it's really, really an interesting place. I highly recommend it. This spring, the suggestion was made that we should go to the National Aviary. If you didn't know it, there is a National Aviary, and it is, strangely enough, in Pittsburgh. I don't know the story of that. It's on the north side of the city. It's in an area that's called Allegheny City. That's the name of the neighborhood that it's in. I've actually spent a lot of time in that part of town. There's a lot of stuff in that area. That's where the Children's Museum is that I've taken my grandsons to a number of times. And it's also the location of the Allegheny Unitarian Universalist Church, which is the place where for the last 2 years, the Buddhist Society of Pittsburgh, which is kind of a cooperative among all the different Buddhist sanghas in the Pittsburgh area, we've been holding our joint Vesak ceremony there every spring for the Buddhist birthday and so on. So I thought I knew that area pretty well, but the president, the student president of the club, had lived in Pittsburgh, which I've never actually lived downtown, or I should say downtown. You got to say it right, downtown. It's downtown. When the students had seen everything that they cared to see at the aviary, which it's not that huge, it didn't take that long, the president suggested that the group walk just a couple of blocks over to a pretty well-known local spot called Randyland. Now, I'd heard of Randyland, but I'd never seen it. So I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that. I'd be curious to see that myself. And the students were amenable, so we walked for a while, longer than I suspect the students thought we were going to be walking, but we walked for a while into what's called this is a very strange little element. This is a little bit of a love story to Pittsburgh, if you haven't figured it out already. There's a little area in this Allegheny City community called the Mexican War Streets, because it's a section of town that was laid out during the Mexican-American War, and the names of all the streets refer to generals and battles and various historical events connected to the war. There's Sherman Street and Fremont and Buena Vista and Monterey and Palo Alto and all these. It's kind of incongruous. It seems a little strange in the middle of Pittsburgh. It's mostly old Victorian houses, which are these days mostly pretty well cared for and pretty good shape. So if you go into that part of town and you get to Art Street, going up Art Street up the hill to the intersection with Jacksonia and its kitty corner from the historic Engine Company No. 3 building. Anybody who knew Pittsburgh, these are pretty well-known landmarks. And you see Randyland, which is one of these old Victorian houses. But what most people actually come to see is not the stuff that's on the house, but mostly it's the backyard. It's what's behind the house, which is an open-air art museum. Mostly what it consists of is signs, hand-painted signs. Imagine the brightest, most neon colors of the rainbow you can picture, with all kinds of interesting aphorisms and things on them. And then it's also full of upcycled found objects. There's a phone booth and mannequins and garden sculptures, reclaimed furniture, lots of toys, all just kind of strewn around all over the place, all painted, again, in these really bright, garish colors. It's definitely what you call folk art, right? It's all raw creativity and sincerity with no formal technique or training. And it's been sort of in a constant evolution since 1995. This is kind of a long-standing thing. And it's named after the artist. The guy's name, Randy Gilson's the guy's name. He was homeless when he first arrived in the neighborhood. This quasi-museum is an outgrowth of, back in the 80s, he started a group there in the neighborhood called the Old Allegheny Garden Society. And the mission of this group was to clean up. It was a pretty blighted neighborhood at that point, and the houses were pretty run down and trash in the streets. And so the whole idea was to try to reclaim the neighborhood and kind of fix things up. So in 1995, he bought this house for $10,000, which even then was really cheap. So it must have been pretty bad shape at the time that he got it. And he started to fix it up. And so as he's fixing up the interior of the house to make it livable, he naturally started to transform the exterior and this small backyard area with his art. And all the while he's doing this, he worked his whole career as a waiter. He's supporting himself as a waiter while he's doing all this stuff. And I've looked online at photos of the place, and it's definitely evolved over time. You can see clearly. So what I'm going to talk about, obviously, is what it kind of looks like now. The signs that are all over the house and around this yard area in the back, where most of the art is, focus on Randy's philosophy of life. What you maybe could think of as and describe as a naive proto-Zen take on the power of positive thinking. Might be one way you could describe it. Many of his aphorisms are kind of a folk wisdom that has some parallels to teachings in the Buddha Dharma. If you go to the front of the house where the front door is, there's this huge sign. There's all kinds of signs all over the front of the house, but the biggest one is entitled, it says at the top, The Brain Manual. And it reads in part, "The brain absorbs trillions of ideas, incorrect, untrue. The brain is a filing cabinet, not faithful, misleading. It refers to the brain as the steering wheel, but it needs to be connected to what he refers to repeatedly as the roots, by which he means the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth. He describes the brain as a filled sponge of infinite thoughts, and that this is a quote from the signs, collects your surroundings, you become what's absorbed." The signs also includes a hand with the fingers labeled eyes, ears, mouth, brain, nose, brain, and painted on the arm it says, "Ideas must be steered with 5 fingers together, rooting realities. Ideas rooted create harvest." Underneath the brain manual sign, there's a smaller one that says, "Question yourself. Does this support how I'm molding myself, my life? Filter all temptation. Teach yourself." In the garden area behind the house, there's one part of it is there's a big post that's covered with these arrow-shaped signs, like you expect to see like names of cities and 50 miles on them, kind of pointing in different directions, that kind of a sign. I'm sure you've seen signs like that. But instead of having city names or something on it, these just have these assorted Randyisms, these assorted kind of aphorisms, some of which are describing similar sorts of things to this brain manual stuff I was talking about a minute ago. One of them says, a brain has 5 pieces: eyes, ears, nose, mouth, brain, 5 balanced parts. And then there's another one, it's labeled your toolbox. And it reads, brains to think before actions, eyes to see, analyze, and learn, ears to listen to many people, mouth to speak when focused, heart to love and forgive, hands to build heart things, feet to walk proud. It was actually another one of the signs on that post that inspired me to write a Dharma talk about Randyland to give to you folks today. It says, this is my favorite one, brains, all capital letters, brains, overrated, not reliable, must be driven, not automatic, beware, brains break very often. If we replace brain with mind, that sounds pretty Buddhist, doesn't it? Right? That sounds pretty Buddhist. In fact, there are some, if you look around in this garden area, there are some kind of little Buddhist touches. There's a big sign that just says karma. And there's a couple of Buddha head garden statues. There's a Hote statue, about that big concrete Hote statue in one corner. So now that I've given you a kind of a general impression of this Randyland place, I want to kind of relate the folk wisdom that it communicates to some elements of the Buddha Dharma. I mentioned that one of Randy's signs says that the brain collects your surroundings, you become what's absorbed. That reminds me of the often quoted first 2 verses of the Dhammapada. If you're familiar with it, this really essential Buddhist scripture collecting sayings of the Buddha. All experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind, speak or act with a corrupted mind, and suffering follows as the wagon wheel follows the hoof of the ox. All experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind, speak or act with a peaceful mind, and happiness follows like a never-departing shadow. Randy's aphorisms also echo, if you think about kind of, there are many warnings in the Buddha's teachings about overconfidence in our own thoughts, urging us to be skeptical of our own reasoning. If we really should beware because brains do break very often, then there's a good reason to be cautious about trusting everything we think, right? Near the beginning of the Vitakasantana Sutta, which is part of the Majjhima Nikaya in the Pali Canon text, the Buddha is quoted as teaching, there is a case where evil, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, aversion, or delusion arise in a monk when he is referring to and attending to a particular theme. He should attend to another theme apart from that one, connected with what is skillful. When he is attending to this other theme apart from that one, connected with what is skillful, then those evil, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, aversion, or delusion are abandoned and subside. With their abandoning, he studies his mind right within, settles it, unifies it, and concentrates it. Just as a dexterous carpenter or his apprentice would use a small peg to knock out, drive out, and pull out a larger one. In the same way, if evil, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, aversion, or delusion arise in a monk while he is referring to and attending to a particular theme, he should attend to another theme apart from that one, connected from what is skillful. When he is attending to this other theme apart from that one, connected with what is skillful, then those evil, unskillful thoughts connected with desire, aversion, or delusion are abandoned and subside. With their abandoning, he steadies his mind right within, settles it, unifies it, and concentrates it. Similarly, the final couple of verses of the Meghiya Sutta, which is in the Udana collection of the Khuddha Nikaya, the collection of kind of shorter text of which the Dhammapada is a part. The last few verses of that sutta say, little thoughts, subtle thoughts, when followed stir up the heart. Not comprehending the thoughts of the heart, one runs here and there, the mind out of control. But comprehending the thoughts of the heart, one who is ardent, mindful, restrains them. When followed, they stir up the heart. One awakened lets them go without trace. Now, I'm not trying to present this artist as some kind of Buddhist savant. It just appears to me that there are some interesting parallels between some of the Buddha's teaching and this artist's kind of idiosyncratic psychology, maybe we could say. I have no idea if he has or hasn't had any kind of exposure to Buddhist teachings. Maybe he has. I don't know. Maybe he's absorbed some things from reading or studying or whatever and kind of expressed them in these ways. I don't know. I don't know a lot about his biography. Don't know anything in it that suggests that that's the case. The big thing, though, what I think the lesson of Randy Land does illustrate is that there are many ways to express a wise idea. We need to be on the lookout for wisdom all the time because there's little enough of it in the world and we overlook it at our peril. Anytime we can find some wisdom is precious. The same wise idea can be presented in different words that may make sense for different audiences or at different times or in different situations. The Buddha called this upaya, right? Skillful means, right? The Buddha was big on knowing your audience, right? And presenting things in a way that the audience is going to relate to, that people can understand and connect to, that'll have more influence. But where brains break very often might be exactly the right lesson or at exactly the right time, expressed in exactly the right way to exactly the right person. Maybe not you, maybe not today, but for somebody, maybe in this room today, or maybe someone who might be watching the recording or listening to the recording later today or next month or next year, hearing that, but where brains break very often might be the upaya that they need at that moment in their life, the bit of wisdom that will be the thing that will touch their heart and mind and that they will connect to. Sangbo Hashipshio, may you, I, and all beings manifest enlightenment.